She had everything, her money, fame, beauty. But in front of hundreds of powerful people, she froze. Her hands stopped, the music died, and her father's pride turned to shame. And then a 7-year-old boy from the cleaning staff walked up and whispered 5 words that changed her entire life. Before we dive in, tell us, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your country or city in the comments below. I love seeing how far our stories travel. The night was supposed to be perfect. The chandeliers of the Aurelia Theater glowed like stars, their golden light spilling over velvet curtains and crystal tables. Every seat was taken by senators, CEOs, and socialites in shimmering gowns. It was the charity gala of the year, hosted by the powerful Kingsley family, the name that meant wealth, influence, and flawless reputation. At the center of it all stood Elena Kingsley, only 19, wearing a flowing silver gown that shimmered like moonlight. She was the daughter everyone admired, beautiful, educated, polished, raised to never make mistakes. And tonight, she was the star performer. A grand piano sat beneath the spotlight. Its black lacquer gleamed like a mirror. Elena approached it, every step measured, every breath rehearsed. Cameras turned. Applause rippled through the hall. Her father, Charles Kingsley, sat in the front row, hands clasped, expression carved in stone. Elena smiled, the way she had practiced in the mirror. Inside, she was drowning. In her dressing room an hour earlier, Elena had sat before the mirror, staring at her reflection. Her fingers trembled in her lap. She whispered to herself, "You can do this. Just breathe," but the silence answered back with doubt. Every sound from the hall, the orchestra tuning, the laughter of guests, felt heavier than her heartbeat. Her father's voice echoed in her memory. "No mistakes tonight, Elena, the world is watching. Don't embarrass me." That sentence had followed her since childhood. It was her lullaby and her prison. She had been trained to be perfect, not happy. When the lights dimmed, she took her seat at the piano. The applause faded into expectant silence. Her hands hovered over the keys. The first note, the one she'd played 1,000 times and wouldn't come. Her mind went blank. The sheet music blurred. All she could hear was the ticking of her heartbeat and the weight of hundreds of eyes. She pressed one key. The sound cracked. Off. Wrong. A whisper from the crowd. A murmur. Then another. She tried again, forcing her trembling fingers to move. But every note stumbled into the next like a child learning to walk. The melody, the one she had practiced for months, broke apart. From the corner of her eye, she saw her father lower his head, his jaw tight. Her chest tightened. Her breath caught. Her hands stopped. Silence. A long, cruel silence that filled the entire hall. Someone coughed. A woman whispered, "Oh dear, she's frozen." And then the applause and slow, pitying end began, not for her talent, but for her failure. Elena rose from the bench. Her legs shook. She bowed, barely one, and walked off stage. Her heels echoed like gunshots in the quiet. She didn't cry. Not yet. Backstage, the world was shadows and muffled noise. Technicians avoided looking at her. Assistants whispered to one another. She leaned against the cold wall, her heart pounding like it was trying to escape her chest. Then the door opened. Her father entered, the kind of man who carried silence like a weapon. He looked at her, not with concern, but with disappointment that cut deeper than anger. "You humiliated yourself," he said flatly. "And me? Dad, I just froze." "I can fix it." "No, Elena, you don't freeze. Not when people depend on you. Not when your name is Kingsley." He turned and left before she could say another word. The door closed, leaving only the echo of her shame. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. She didn't know. Then from the corner of the corridor, a small voice spoke. "Are you okay, miss?" Elena blinked. A little boy stood there, maybe 7, wearing a faded hoodie and sneakers too big for his feet. In his hands, he held a mop handle taller than him. His eyes were curious, soft, unafraid. She recognized him, the maid's son. He sometimes played in the hallway while his mother cleaned the guest rooms upstairs. Elena tried to smile. "I'm fine," he tilted his head. "You don't look fine," she laughed, a small broken sound. "Guess I'm not a good actress then." The boy stepped closer, careful not to touch the polished floor with his dirty shoes. He looked at the piano on stage, visible through the half-open curtain. "You were playing, right?" Elena nodded, eyes down. "Trying to." He frowned thoughtfully, the way kids do when they don't understand grown-up sadness. Then he said in a whisper that somehow sounded louder than all the applause she'd ever gotten, "Maybe the music's hiding, 'cause you're too scared to feel it." Elena's breath caught. He shrugged as if it wasn't anything special. "My mom says when I can't draw or sing, it's 'cause I'm scared of what's inside me. Maybe the piano got scared too." He smiled, showing the gap between his teeth, then turned to leave, his small mop dragging behind him. Elena sat there frozen for a different reason now. She had spent her entire life learning to be precise, polished, perfect. But this boy, this child, had just said something that cracked her entire world open, too scared to feel it. The words echoed like a melody she'd never heard before. Later that night, in her empty room overlooking the city skyline, Elena sat at her piano again. The same keys that had betrayed her earlier glimmered under soft light. She didn't play the song from the gala. Instead, she pressed one random note, then another. No sheet music, no plan, just sound. For the first time, it wasn't about performing. It was about feeling. And somehow, for the first time in her life, the music returned. In the quiet corners of the Kingsley mansion, long after the guests were gone and the chandeliers went dark, a small boy with big eyes swept the marble floor. His name was Jaden Miller, 7 years old, curious, and far too wise for his age. His mother, Ruth, was one of the maids. She worked quietly, always moving, always cleaning. To most people, she was invisible. But to Jaden, she was a superhero. She could make tired things shine again. And maybe that's why Jaden loved sound, and because sound couldn't hide. It filled every corner, touched everything, refused to be invisible. Jaden's world was nothing like Elena Kingsley's. He lived with his mom in a tiny apartment on the top floor of a rundown building in Harlem. The paint peeled off the walls and the radiator hissed like an angry cat. But in that small space there was laughter. There was love. Every morning Ruth kissed Jaden's forehead and said the same thing. "Baby, promise me you'll listen to the world today. The world's always talking. You just gotta hear it." So Jaden did. He heard music in everything. The rhythm of shoes on the subway platform, the buzz of streetlights, the click of the elevator in the Kingsley mansion. He could tap his pencil on the table and make it sound like a heartbeat. He could hum along with the wind and somehow stay in key. He didn't have a piano. He didn't have a teacher. But he had something better, ears that could turn noise into magic. After the gala disaster, Ruth came home late, exhausted. She tried to hide her worry, but Jaden noticed. He was sitting on the floor, drawing a keyboard on a piece of cardboard with a black marker. "Mom?" he asked quietly. "That lady who cried backstage, she's your boss's daughter, right?" Ruth froze, surprised. "You saw her?" Jaden nodded. She was sad, like the music ran away from her. Ruth sighed, pouring herself a glass of water. "That's not our business, baby. Some people got everything and still can't find peace. It's a different kind of hard." But Jaden couldn't stop thinking about her. The fancy girl in the silver dress who looked like she'd forgotten how to breathe. He didn't know her story. He just knew she looked how he sometimes felt. Lost. A few days later, while Ruth was cleaning the Kingsley Garden Hall, Jaden tagged along. He sat near the corner with his small sketch pad, tapping out rhythms with 2 pencils while his mom worked. Through the tall windows, he saw Elena Kingsley walking outside, her hair loose, her expression blank. She looked like a ghost of herself, there but not really alive. Something tugged at Jaden's heart. He stood up, shy but brave. He ran out into the garden. "Hey, miss," he called. "You found the music yet?" Elena stopped, startled. Then she smiled faintly. "You again?" He nodded proudly. "Yep, the mop guy's son," she laughed softly. "Jaden, right?" He grinned. "You remembered." For a moment the air felt lighter. The tension that clung to her shoulders seemed to fade. She crouched down. "What did you mean that night? About the music hiding?" Jaden shrugged, tapping his knee rhythmically. "Sometimes I feel scared, and the sounds in my head go quiet. But when I stop trying to be good at it, the music comes back. Maybe it's the same for you." Elena stared at him, this tiny boy with dusty shoes and eyes too bright for the world. And for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. They sat together on a bench. Jaden opened his backpack and pulled out his treasure, a small, broken keyboard he'd found in the trash months ago. Half the keys didn't work. The others squeaked like mice. Still, he turned it on proudly. The red light flickered. "Listen," he said, and began to play. The melody was rough. Simple, just 4 notes repeating. But it had something Elena's perfect performances never did. Heart. It wasn't clean. It wasn't precise. It was alive. When he finished, he looked up shyly. "It's called Rain on Glass. I made it when our window was leaking last week." Elena laughed, a real unguarded laugh. "You made that?" "Yep," he said, shoulders straight. "It don't sound like the songs rich people play, but it makes my mom smile." Something inside Elena cracked open. She had spent years chasing perfection, and this child had found beauty in broken notes. She asked softly, "Can you show me how you do that?" Jaden tilted his head. "You already know how to play, miss, you just forgot why." Her eyes stung. "Then help me remember." He smiled, the kind of smile that belonged to someone who didn't know he was changing a life. "Okay," he said, "but only if you promise not to be scared of feeling." That evening, back inside the mansion, Elena sat at her grand piano. But this time, instead of rehearsing the same lifeless piece, she mimicked Jaden's simple tune, 4 small notes, imperfect and human. Her father passed by the door, frowned at the strange melody, and moved on. But Elena didn't care, because for the first time she wasn't performing. She was remembering days turned into weeks. Elena would sneak away from her lessons down the long marble hall and find Jaden in the service quarters. He'd be sitting cross-legged on the floor with his tiny keyboard, teaching her songs with names like Bus Breaks Blues and Grandma's Hummingbird. He'd say, "Don't count the beats and feel 'em." She'd say, "Don't rush the melody, listen to it breathe." It was the strangest friendship, the billionaire's daughter and the maid's son. But in that hidden corner of the mansion, the walls between their worlds started to melt. One evening, as they played together, Jaden paused and looked up. "You know, Miss Elena," he said thoughtfully, "you don't need all them big lights and fancy dresses. You sound better when you smile." Elena laughed, brushing her hair back. "You think so?" "I know so," he said confidently. "Music don't care about money. It just wants to be heard." And in that moment, Elena understood something no teacher, no trophy, no father had ever taught her. That music wasn't about impressing people. It was about connecting with them. That night, she wrote in her journal, "A boy with broken shoes taught me how to feel again." Outside, the city hummed its own lullaby. Somewhere in Harlem, a little boy tapped his pencil to the rhythm of life, smiling at the thought that the sad piano lady had finally found her sound again. The rain fell softly that afternoon, tapping against the wide glass windows of the Kingsley mansion like fingers searching for rhythm. Elena sat by the piano again. No gown this time, no audience, no spotlight. Just her and the sound of water and thunder. Every drop seemed to echo a small piece of Jaden's song, the one he'd played on his broken keyboard, Rain on Glass. She smiled to herself. That's what it had felt like. Delicate, imperfect, but full of life. For the first time, she wasn't afraid of the silence between the notes. She was learning to breathe inside it. Downstairs in the service hallway, laughter bounced off the cold tile walls. Jaden had just finished his homework and was sitting cross-legged with a snack his mother packed. He was humming something, a tune Elena had taught him the day before. It was a simple classical scale, but he'd twisted it into something new, tapping the rhythm on his lunchbox like a drum. The two worlds, her mansion of marble and his world of cardboard keyboards, were beginning to blend, one sound at a time. Every evening after that, when the mansion grew quiet, Elena would sneak down the narrow staircase that led to the back quarters. Her silver shoes made no sound. There she'd find Jaden waiting, sometimes on the floor, sometimes perched on a box, always smiling. They had their own secret classroom now. He called it the music room without rules. "All right," Jaden would say, grinning. "Lesson 1, no sheet music." "No wrong notes," Elena would raise an eyebrow. "That's not how it works." "Sure it is," he said, tapping the old keyboard. "You play what you feel. If it sounds true, it's right." And somehow that made perfect sense. Together they built a strange kind of harmony. Elena brought skill, the precision of her training, the elegance of her teachers. Jaden brought instinct, the rhythm of his world, the heartbeat of Harlem's streets. When she played too carefully, he'd nudge her elbow. "Loosen up, Miss Elena, you're strangling the music." When he played too wild, she'd laugh and say, "Breathe, Jaden. Let the melody lead you." Slowly, something beautiful began to form. A melody that didn't belong to either of them alone. They started calling it "The Sky Between Us," because that's where their worlds met, somewhere in the middle. Not hers, not his, just music. It was a blend of everything. Her piano's gentle grace, his raw, soulful rhythm. Sometimes it sounded like a storm. Sometimes like sunlight after rain. When they played, time disappeared. It didn't matter that one wore silk and the other wore sneakers. It didn't matter that her hands were polished and his were rough. For those few minutes, they were equals. Two dreamers speaking the same invisible language. But not everyone saw it that way. One evening, as Elena returned from the staff wing, her father was waiting at the top of the staircase. Charles Kingsley, tall, sharp, powerful, the kind of man whose presence filled the air like smoke. He looked at her calmly, too calmly. "You've been spending time in the service quarters?" Elena froze. Don't insult my intelligence. You've been sneaking around with the staff's boy." Her voice shook. "He's not just a boy. He's a musician." Charles's expression hardened. "He's the son of a maid, Elena, not your friend. And certainly not your teacher." Her chest tightened. "You don't understand." "No," he said coldly. "You don't. You are a Kingsley. You have a name to protect. That's what matters," she wanted to scream. She wanted to tell him that none of it mattered. Not the name, not the galas, not the perfection. But she didn't. Not yet. She walked past him, silent, but inside her something had started to break. The next day, she didn't show up to the music room without rules. Jaden waited for hours, drawing little musical notes on his notebook, wondering if he'd done something wrong. His mom, Ruth, found him sitting there. "She's probably busy, baby," she said softly. But Jaden shook his head. "No." She's scared again. And he was right. That night, Elena sat alone at her piano, the mansion cold and quiet around her. She looked at the keys and thought of his words. "You're strangling the music." Then she did something reckless. She grabbed her phone, set it on a tripod, and began to play the song they had written, "The Sky Between Us." Her fingers trembled at first, but then the music found her. Her notes were soft, honest, alive. When she finished, she posted the video online. No makeup, no fancy title. Just the caption, "A song I made with my friend Jaden." She turned off the lights and went to sleep. By morning, the video had over 500,000 views. People weren't just listening, and they were feeling. Comments poured in. "This sounds like hope." "Who's the boy behind this melody?" "This is what music should be." Jaden saw it on his mom's old phone while waiting for the subway. His eyes went wide. "Mom!" "That's our song." Ruth gasped, nearly dropping her coffee. "Boy, what did you do?" "I didn't do anything," he said, laughing. "Miss Elena did." For the first time, the world was hearing a sound born from both sides of the city. Marble and concrete, gold and grit. And they loved it. But not everyone celebrated. Charles Kingsley saw the video too. He called his daughter into his office, fury simmering beneath his calm voice. "Do you have any idea what you've done? You embarrassed this family again. Associating with that child." Elena met his gaze. Her voice was steady. "That child reminded me what it means to be human." For the first time, her father had no words. She turned to leave, whispering one last sentence before walking out. "I won't stop playing my truth, Dad, not this time." That night, she met Jaden again at the community center where he sometimes helped his mom clean. She handed him a notebook filled with scribbled notes and sketches. "I've been writing," she said. "A new song." Jaden's eyes sparkled. "What's it called?" She smiled softly. "Freedom in D minor," he grinned. "That sounds like trouble," she laughed. "The good kind." They sat at the dusty upright piano in the corner and began to play, slowly at first, then with growing confidence. Each note was a rebellion, each chord, a bridge between two worlds that were never meant to meet. When they finished, Jaden leaned close and whispered, "Miss Elena, when you play like that, you don't sound scared anymore." She smiled, tears catching the light. "That's because I'm not playing for them anymore, Jaden." "Then who you playing for?" "For us. For everyone who ever felt small." And as their laughter echoed through the empty hall, one thing became clear. What had started as a whisper backstage had grown into a revolution made of sound. The night of the Kingsley Foundation's annual gala arrived again, exactly 1 year after the night Elena Kingsley froze on that same stage. But this time, the air felt different. It wasn't glittering with champagne laughter or shallow applause. It was trembling, waiting. Elena stood behind the curtain, palms pressed together, breathing in the hush before a storm. Her silver gown shimmered under the low light, but she wasn't the same girl who had worn it before. She was no longer a performer. She was a storyteller, and this time she had a story worth telling. Inside the Aurelia Theater, the seats were full again. Newspaper editors, business leaders, socialites, and in the very last row, a small boy in a neatly pressed shirt, swinging his legs nervously, Jaden Miller. He had never seen so many chandeliers in his life. His mother, Ruth, sat beside him, holding his hand tight. Neither of them belonged there, and not by invitation, not by status, but by something stronger. Heart. Backstage, Elena adjusted the mic stand. The host announced her name, and the hall erupted in applause, polite, polished, expectant. She stepped onto the stage, her heels clicking softly, her heartbeat steady, under the golden light. She looked out at the audience, faces painted in wealth, perfection, and quiet judgment. But her eyes went straight to the back row. Jaden grinned, giving her 2 thumbs up, and that was all she needed. She sat at the piano, the same one that had once betrayed her, the same one that had heard her silence, but tonight she wouldn't play for her father, or for critics, or for perfection. She'd play for the boy who reminded her that music wasn't about approval. It was about truth. She took a deep breath, leaned toward the microphone, and said quietly, "This piece is called The Sky Between Us. It's not classical. It's not perfect, but it's real. I didn't write it alone. Someone small, but mighty, helped me find it." Gasps rippled through the audience as a spotlight turned toward the side of the stage. And there he was, Jaden, clutching his small keyboard, blinking against the light. Charles Kingsley's face went pale. He leaned forward, whispering harshly to his assistant, "What is this nonsense?" But before anyone could stop them, Jaden walked onto the stage, head high, steps careful but brave. He looked at Elena and whispered, "You ready, miss?" She smiled. Always. They sat side by side. 2 worlds. 1 piano. The first notes were soft, Jaden's rhythm gentle like footsteps in rain. Then Elena joined in, her fingers gliding across the keys like light meeting water. The melody rose and fell, dancing between classical precision and soulful improvisation. Every sound carried a story. Her loneliness, his hope, their shared courage. It wasn't perfect. It was alive. Halfway through, the tempo changed. Jaden added his street-born rhythm, and Elena followed with graceful chords that caught and lifted every beat. It felt like the city itself was breathing with them, the hum of Harlem meeting the hush of high society, merging into something no one had ever heard before. When the last note faded, there was no movement, just silence. A silence so thick it felt like the room had forgotten how to breathe. Then one person began to clap. Then another. Then the entire hall rose to its feet. The applause thundered through the golden room like a wave, raw, unfiltered, real. Elena stood, her heart racing, her eyes wet. Jaden looked up awestruck, whispering, "They liked it?" She laughed through tears. "No, Jaden. They felt it." Later that night, backstage, reporters flooded in. Everyone wanted to know who the boy was. Everyone wanted to talk about The Sky Between Us. But Elena wasn't thinking about fame or headlines. She was thinking about something bigger. She found her father standing alone near the exit. His face was unreadable. "You embarrassed me once," he said softly. "Tonight?" "You humbled me," Elena blinked. "You mean you liked it?" "I didn't understand it," he admitted. "But I believed it. And maybe that's what I should have wanted all along." For the first time in years, there was no distance in his eyes, only quiet pride. Weeks later, the story had spread everywhere. The billionaire's daughter and the maid's son. Headlines called it the duet that broke the internet. But Elena ignored the noise. She had a new mission. Together with Jaden and his mother, She founded the Open Keys Project, a free community music initiative that offered instruments and lessons to kids from struggling neighborhoods. Elena funded it. Ruth managed it. And Jaden, only 7, was its youngest instructor, teaching other kids how to feel sound before learning to read it. Months passed. The old community center where they practiced was alive again. Laughter spilling from every room. The sound of pianos, drums, violins, and voices blending together like sunlight through stained glass. One afternoon, Elena sat at the piano while Jaden played beside her, leading a small class of children. He was confident now, same boy but brighter. His hands flew across the keys, fearless. She watched him and smiled. "You know, Jaden," she said, "you started all this with one sentence." He grinned. "What sentence?" "Maybe the music's hiding 'cause you're too scared to feel it." He laughed, shaking his head. "Guess you found it then." "No," she said softly. "You found it for me." That evening, after everyone left, the two of them stayed behind to tidy up. The lights were low, the city outside glowing like a heartbeat. Elena began to play, slowly, softly. Jaden joined in, matching her rhythm without a word. No sheet music, no audience, just two souls and the sound between them. As their music drifted through the empty hall, it felt like the walls themselves were listening, and maybe they were, because what began as a whisper backstage had become a song that would never fade.
Sometimes the person who changes your life doesn't have power, fame, or money. Sometimes it's the voice you almost didn't hear, the one that reminds you to feel again.